Okay, so just want to comment a bit about the footage that's going around the internet on British political forums at the moment. And it's showing Tommy Robinson supporters in central London, I believe it was yesterday, clashing with the police. Few things I want to say. I think these people are utter hypocrites because they behave this way and then they whinge about a negative image. They whinge when people call them louts and so on. But I strongly believe that if you behave a certain way in public, you're entirely responsible for the image that you get. If you behave like a lout, you'll be seen as a lout. Simple as that. To give a bit of context here for anyone that doesn't know, the activist Tommy Robinson, let's say anti-Islamism activist. I'm not calling him far right. I'm saying anti-Islamism activist, right? Um, was recently charged with contempt of court. Now, I made a video about that because it had caused a lot of anger. People were saying this shows double standards. Why is Tommy Robinson being targeted when British Pakistani grooming gangs, the authorities done nothing about them for a long time? The anger was understandable because that is true. Those grooming cases in Telford and Rotherham and other towns had been basically left under the radar for too long. Campaigners had tried to bring attention to it. They were branded racist. So the anger was understandable. And one of my, I've always been vocal about what I see as a regressive left downplaying these things and always using the narrative of, oh, it must be racist. That's a big problem. But the fact of the matter is, if you look into the case, Tommy Robinson wasn't just reporting, he was there to disrupt an ongoing trial. Now, this wasn't any of his personal family members involved, so he had no personal reason to be there. That's a serious matter because it's disrupting due process. It prolongs the trial for the victims. Doesn't help anyone. All it does is make it, rather than demanding justice, it actually makes it slower to get justice. I hope these grooming gangs get years behind bars. Say, this is an evil, destructive crime, and these are evil men, and I hope they get years behind bars. Clearly, Tommy Robinson's not in the same category. Nevertheless, contempt of court is a serious matter, and if you actually look into the details of the case, he was guilty with what he was charged. He went there knowing full well that he shouldn't have been there. He defied that. He's brought this on himself. So people treating Tommy Robinson like a free speech martyr, I think, are missing the point here about what exactly he has been charged with. He hasn't been charged with simply having opinions on this. He's been charged with disrupting an ongoing trial. That's contempt of court. Now, I get that the legal system can be incredibly frustrating. God knows I felt angry with certain judgments. And I do believe that, for example, judges should be far more accountable. I think those are all valid arguments. But you have to behave in a responsible way, and Tommy Robinson didn't do that. So, he's brought this situation on himself. Anyway, his supporters decided to gather in central London yesterday. Um, and this is once again turned into a whole left wing versus right wing thing. My view on this is pretty simple. If you're in a public demonstration, you behave with responsibility. Full stop. You get left wing equivalents. You get the black bloc anarchist thugs. Every G8, well G7 as it is now, G6 it might be. Every summit, they turn up. They wear their silly little balaclavas. They attack police. They smash up Starbucks. They set cars on fire. They're thugs. That's all they are, and that's how they should be regarded. You get Antifa protesters who more often than not behave in a yobbish manner, attacking police. My point is, this is not a partisan issue. You get it on the left, you get it on the right. But to those Tommy Robinson supporters who say, "Oh, stop calling us far right," well, if you're making Nazi salutes, then what the hell do you want? What the hell do you expect people to think? There was one footage of a guy making Nazi salutes. Now, what they will say, oh, but that's not everyone. Sure. But what I would then say is, well, then rein in on your own, rein in on those in your midst. Now, the guy may have been taking the piss. He may have been just trying to get under the skin of the left wing counter protesters. But these people really do themselves no favors. If you're picking up police cones, right, you're picking up fencing to throw at the police, you're getting drunk, you're behaving basically like a football hooligan, then don't come whinging about your negative image, right? If you're going down a street shouting, England, England, free Tommy Robinson, free Tommy, blah, blah, if you're behaving like a yob, then don't expect civilized society to have any sympathy with you. Um, so I don't think these people should be normalized as just angry citizens, as some people have tried to do. They've tried to kind of justify their behavior and say, oh, well, they're angry about the miscarriage of justice. I don't believe it is a miscarriage of justice. I think Tommy Robinson was actually guilty of what he was charged. But assuming it is, it's not about. I've just left a debate on this, and someone said, oh, but we're past the point of reason debate. The thing is, I'm not expecting people to sort of, sit down with a nice cup of tea and talk politely. Anger is a totally human response, and I think there is a place for angry protest. But by angry protest, I'm not talking about attacking the police. I'm not talking about smashing things up. I'm not talking about acting like a football yob, right? And I make that comparison very deliberately because very often Tommy Robinson himself is from that sort of football casual background, and their behaviour is very similar to the way you see football louts behave on the terraces. It's kind of mob rule, it's strength in numbers, getting drunk out of their mind. These people don't deserve any respect. And if they don't like being called far right, well, a little word of advice, don't go around giving Nazi salutes. Or if you're not one of those doing that, then rein in on those who are. If you are part of a movement, it's your responsibility to call out those within your movement that is giving the movement a bad image. And that applies to anything. Um, if I was going to a demonstration and there were people there behaving in that sort of way, I'd be embarrassed about it. I wouldn't want to be associated with them. And I would be confronting them and saying, you're giving us a bad image, pack it in. Or I would leave the demo, actually, because I wouldn't want to be associated with them. I'm not saying that there is no reason to be angry. There are double standards, and I do think that on some level, the police have been very quick at tackling Tommy Robinson in a way that they haven't been with, for example, British Pakistani grooming gangs. So I do understand the anger, but what I won't accept is this normalization of that sort of behavior. It shouldn't be normalized, it's not justified, and it doesn't deserve any respect. So, any Tommy Robinson supporters watching this, I don't want you coming on this video and saying, oh, but, well, firstly, don't try to paint me as a lefty. I'm not, okay? Because that's your typical tactic that if you don't agree with them, then you must be some sort of tree hugging hippie or no, okay? I hate political correctness. I hate the fact that there has not been enough done on these grooming cases. I hate all that stuff, and I get the anger. But in the end of the day, if you can't behave responsibly, or at least in a manner that doesn't bring your movement into disrepute, then really you don't deserve respect. Another issue about this is they used an image that was purportedly from Liverpool to justify their numbers in London. So they're being dishonest as well. Um, Donald Trump tactics, if you like. So yeah, far left, far right, two sides of the same coin. And if you don't like being called far right, then stop associating with people who really are far right. If someone is a blood and soil nationalist, if they're getting into chants like England, England, and then getting into blood and soil nationalist narrative about, the whites versus the Asians, etc., as some of them have done, then they can't complain about getting the perception as being far right. At the very least, they're behaving like hooligans, and I make no apology for making that connotation. That is exactly what it looks like. In the end of the day, most of them are men. Incidentally, where's the women? This is hardly a family-friendly event, is it? Um, so I've no sympathy with them. If you're attacking the police, by the way, it's cowardly. If you're in a mob, if you're in a crowd and you're attacking, I mean, there was about 20 police from the video I saw, and hundreds of these guys just, you know, shouting off, sending off all the aggro, trying to throw up police cones, police fences, etc. No, it's not legitimate, and they don't deserve respect. Um, and they're not doing Tommy Robinson any favors. They're just making themselves look like idiots and knuckle draggers, and they can't whinge that the rest of society doesn't respect them. Behave that way, people won't respect you. And this also applies to anarchist thugs on the far left side of things. People who go to G7 demos because they're against capitalism and think that they're making a point by smashing up Starbucks. No, you can't hide behind politics. You behave like a thug, you're a thug. Simple as that.